Today we're going to talk about how Liferay fits into the realm of all these latest technologies that we have seen out there. And if you think about like all that's happening in the tech world, we have like frameworks all the time, new frameworks coming every week. We have new programming paradigms coming every other year. So there are many things changing. And it's been very challenging for us as software engineers to deal with all those changes. And that's because the web itself changed. We started with this kind of web where there was only a document, and that document had some links. The user will go on their desktop, access the internet, make a request. The server would go and then fetch a file, usually index.html file, grab it, and show to the user. That's all we used to do, and that was great, that was amazing, but it was not enough. Eventually, the web evolved. It was not only about making static pages anymore, it was about making things dynamic. So you would have like a desktop, you access the internet, you do a request to the server, and now you had like this magic file. That's when PHP was like super big, right? Or JSP, like dynamic languages that you could just do something more dynamic, something more special that will like fetch information from a database and show it on the page. That was awesome, that was very nice, but still this was very limited to a tech audience. Non-technical people didn't have access to that. And that's when the CMS era emerged. So now we also have like a CMS, some kind of system that someone would just, non-technical person would just like fill it out some things, and then that would populate the database. So that way we're able to do much nicer things. And eventually the smartphone came. And you all know this story. This is not new to you. You know this already. We used to have just like one type of screen, and now we had this totally new screen and a totally new experience, much smaller, much like a hardware was much different than it was for a desktop, and you had to adapt to that new scenario. And I don't know if you remember this, but when smartphones came out, it was all about mobile first. Everybody used to say, you need to build your website mobile first. Don't design for the desktop and then reduce your pages. Do mobile first because that's the future. And they were right. But still, the iPhone that started this whole trend, it's been out for 10 years. Apple and the iPhone, they completed 10 years doing this device. And if you think about it, mobile first is not enough. And it's not enough because we are in a different era. Now, we don't have only computers and smartphones or tablets. We have like a full range of devices, and they don't communicate the same way. When you do a request to the server, it's not only about returning an HTML file or .php or .jsp, whatever the language is. Now it's about returning a JSON object or something else. You need to be able to communicate to those devices in a different way. And that's when this internet of screens, everything was about a screen. It's not about a screen anymore. It's about things. And I know, like, maybe that's not the case for you, but for me, whenever I hear this term, Internet of Things, IoT, it's always like something from the future. It's always something that it's coming, and we need to be prepared about. You think about smart fridges. Not everybody has a smart fridge in their house, or a smart car. Not everybody has a smart car. And so we think it's something that it's coming. But in reality, it's not the case. Even if you're not building something for a car or a fridge, you still, maybe you're building a website and you're building a chatbot for Slack, or you're building an API that Google Home or Alexa will consume. Those are things that are today. They're not for tomorrow. So we live in a world that it's a totally different shift. It's about building your API first, and then making sure all these devices, or even if it's just like different interfaces that doesn't have a screen, they can consume this API and can access that data. And you have like many cases in the industry. Like Stripe is a company that if you want to do payments on the web, you can just request this API and you can subscribe to a plan. You can do like monthly subscriptions. You have all this workflow of payment that if you would build yourself, it would take a lot of time. Another case of Alara, they have this API that you can calculate taxes. And depending on the country that your user is doing something. Same business model, you just request an API, they return a result, that's it, you pay per API call. You have Clearbit, which is another company that what they do is pretty much they augment information about certain people. So if you want to know how many people there are in the company that they work for, and other informations that you can just improve, like if you have a sales or a marketing product, you can improve your lead and have more information about that. So there's all these new tools. There are all these new technologies. And if you think about it, Liferay is in such a unique position because we have this amazing product with tons of functionalities. There's so many functionalities on Liferay. And if we can make that product a headless platform that you can request things, we can build like amazing things and very powerful applications. Imagine document library and you want to build like another Dropbox in your company and you can just request information from this document library. Or we can have Liferay being a headless CMS where you can build the whole experience, totally different front end or totally different interface, but you consume that as an API. And commerce, another thing that it's coming, we're super excited about. Imagine if we can leverage all this cool stuff that are being built on commerce and we expose that as API so you can use in our project. So that's like really powerful and opens so many doors. But still, like, why are those APIs so important? Maybe when we hear those terms, API first, and again, we think it's something that is coming, that is not a reality, it's something for the next years. And when in the reality, it's not. I don't know, do you guys recognize this company? Anyone? That's Uber. That's the first website of Uber. That's when you would request a car using your phone and you would send a SMS. And basically what they wanted is that you didn't need to care about like paying your driver. You could just charge your credit card right away. So that was very cool. And for Uber, they were in a very difficult situation because every country in the world, they will try to copy their business model, right? They needed to be fast, like they're Uber clones all over the world. And if you think about the Uber app as an engineering product, it's not that difficult, and it's really based on APIs. We all know how Uber works. You go and then you request a car. When you open the Uber app, there's a request for the geolocation. And then you pick a driver or automatically assigns a driver for you, and then you receive a notification that the driver is coming or not. And then you enter in the car, directions. The driver needs directions to go somewhere. And then finally, payment. So if we break down the Uber app, what do we have? We have, first thing is identify the user location. You open the app, that's the first request you do. If you're on iOS, you have the core location framework that you can use. If you're on Android, you also have APIs on Android that you can just get the current location. Okay, now you have this. So now you need to alert the user that the driver is coming. So there are many ways you can do it. With push notifications on iOS or Google Cloud Messaging on Android, you do that. But if you're a mobile developer, you know that you can't rely on push notifications because that's like a message queue that you don't know if it's going to be delivered or not. So what do? You can send an SMS, and you can maybe use Twilio, which is just another company that you can send a request, they send an SMS for you. And Uber uses that to make sure that you know that your driver is coming, that you need to leave your home and go there. And then next step, you enter your car, and then the driver needs directions. So again, Uber uses MapKit on iOS as the API to make those directions, and there's also the Google Maps direction API. Finally, you leave your car, and now you need to pay. So Uber, again, uses Braintree, which is like a division from PayPal that you make an API request, and there's a payment. And they also use Card.io, which is something that you include in your app, and instead of like typing all the numbers from your credit card, you just put your credit card in front of your camera, you take a picture, they read the numbers, and they populate the field for you. So there's there's just APIs, API calls every single time. The Uber app itself is not that special. It's just a bunch of API calls. And that's how they were able to be so proactive in the market and not just being like someone new comes in and just take over. They were able to move fast and iterate fast. And think about you as a software engineer. Like, how much time would it take for you to build all this from scratch if you had to? Even if you started like 5 years ago, you'll probably still be working on some of those pieces because there's so many pieces to build all this. It's a fully featured application, but there's so many pieces that are connected over there that would take like a very long time if you didn't use those APIs. So I think that your job as a software engineer is not to write code. We often think like on the day-to-day basis that, okay, it's all about writing code, but that's not the reality. Your job is to solve problems. Sometimes you solve problems with code. Sometimes you don't. You need to have the experience to realize that, okay, what I need to do is to get this done. And what are the tools that I'm going to use? That's my job to figure it out. Sometimes you have to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes there's no need for that. And the business expectations are, they just keep growing. The budget is the same. The budget is usually flat, but the business expectations are getting bigger and bigger. And it's because the user expectations are bigger. Users, they expect real-time interactions. They don't expect things to be slow or something like this. When they're using Facebook every single day and someone leaves a comment on their picture, they expect that notification to come instantly. When they're talking to someone on messages, they expect those messages to be delivered and whatever is replied to be delivered in real time. That's the baseline. That's not like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, look at this amazing new feature. No, that's the baseline. Users expect multiple channels. They will transition from different devices. And it's not about just making that experience responsive on your phone and tablet and your computer. It's about having a fully featured experience. Like those times where you had a mobile site, am.something.com, that's past, that's like from 5 years ago. Today is about having all responsive and having all the features they need to complete a certain task. Not only adjusting what comes here, and this, and it goes there. It's about having the whole flow and the whole experience to be nice. And they expect continuity. If they switch from different devices, they expect things to work. Spotify is a good example. You're listening a song on your phone. You can tap your computer if you're on the same Wi-Fi network. Then the music will go out from your computer. If you have a speaker, Google Home or Alexa, you can just click over there, and the sound continues there. If you're driving and you're listening to Spotify, and then you come to work, turn off your car, go to work, then you open your computer, the music will be stopped at the same place. So that's continuity. iPhone, when you receive a call, you get this call and it appears in your computer if you're working on your computer. So we have like all these pieces. That's all things that the users require nowadays. They expect those experiences. And what businesses do, they expect that you ship faster. All these things that are not easy to solve, doing all these pieces that are not easy. And businesses expect you to do that, and to do that much faster than before. So you have to be able to ship fast. That's just the reality. And that's why you need a very good cloud strategy. You need to be able to build projects faster. That's the reality. You need to be able to make changes quickly. If you need to deploy something to production, you can't wait like for a 2-hour window that you can do that, or ask another team to do that. You need to be able to make changes fast. You need to monitor how your apps are doing. And you need to be able to scale anytime. We live in a world that things can get viral very quickly. Even if you work in an industry that, oh, that's not the case for me, like my website will not get viral or anything, you never know. Something can be published and then you're gonna have lots of traffic. So how you're gonna deal with that, that's the important piece. That's why we're like so focused on we deploy and we wanna make sure we have a good cloud experience over there. But it's not only about cloud, not only about APIs. The way we differentiate in terms of technology is by using what's available over there, and open source is the best model to do that. It's just like unbelievable. And many companies realize that, how open source are important. If you think about maybe all the companies in the world, Apple is the most closed source one. They never leak any of those things that are working. There are tons of things that they protect over there. But recently, like a couple days ago, they made their iOS and macOS kernels open source. And that was like big. Everybody like went crazy, like, oh my gosh, even Apple is open sourcing things now. That was really unexpected. And that's because Apple realized the world we live in. We have like this whole movement of people saying, you need to open your code, right? Like make everything open source. Like everything needs to be open source. Doesn't matter what you write. There are books about open source and how you should make your things open source. People say that GitHub is your resume. Like you have tools that you can just put your GitHub and then it generates a resume from that. You have people like John Resig, which is the creator of jQuery, saying when it comes to hiring, I'll take a GitHub commit log over a resume any day. So that's like a completely different shift in the industry, and that affects us. And what happens? We as developers, we think, okay, so I should do something about it. I'm going to GitHub, I'm going to create a new repo. You go there, you have like so many expectations. You're like super happy. This new library will change the world. And then you work like there's no tomorrow. You type and you work in this library, you think it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna change everything. And then eventually you're gonna launch. And your expectations are high. Like this project is gonna help so many people. I'm glad this is gonna be out. And in reality, it's different. When you open source your project, it's much different than you expected. So we need to know that open source is not only about GitHub. Open source is a lifestyle. Open source is a different way of thinking. I was going through like Liferay portal and I was wondering like, when was the first commit? And then I found this when they moved from SVN, Brian moved from SVN to Git, this commit in 2006. And I was like, oh, okay. It's been a long time since Liferay is investing in open source. I was checking like the numbers from, we have like 4 or 5 organizations on GitHub, and we have like 800,000 commits. Many repos over there. It's just been like lots of code being published out there. And Liferay is open source, not because now it's trending to be open source, that now everything should be open source, so let's go with them. That's not the case. Liferay is open source because we believe that open source is the best software model out there. And I just wanted to leave you guys with this phrase. And you have experienced that already, that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And that's what we want to do. That's why we're here with you guys. And that's the message I would like to leave you. So thank you so much. Awesome.